Happy end of January, everybody. It's been a doozy. I don't think anyone will fault me if I say it's about time. So glad it's over. So glad it's done. Not going to go into detail, but I do live in DC and we've had a lot going on this month, a lot of tragedies. So I'm ready to talk about something much more positive, which is the books that I read this month. And we're going to start with that. So the first book I read in the month of January in the year of 2025 was the audiobook for Two Can Play by Ellie Hazelwood. My library hold became available on New Year's Day and I was like, okay, so this is perfect timing. So I listened to that audiobook. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 3-star because I like Ellie Hazelwood, but I think her novellas are lacking in the depth that a lot of her other books have. So not as much of a fan because of that. But you know, it is what it is. I liked it. I would say it was just okay, personally. So that's kind of where I'm at. The second book that I read in the month of January in the year of 2025 was The Dagger and the Flame by Catherine Doyle. I read this book, well, I've had this book for a lot longer than I should have had it before I got around to reading it. I do have the ARC. I got it in summer of 2024. So I should have read it a lot sooner than I did. But I regretted waiting so long to read it. I did really enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. It's a YA fantasy. I really liked it. There were moments where I was like, yeah, this kind of feels like every other YA fantasy, but I think that there's something to be said for the plot structure that YA fantasies have. Like, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And so that's kind of like, yes, it was a 4-star for me, but I did really enjoy it in the moment. The Dagger and the Flame takes place in, I think, medieval. Not entirely sure. It takes place in Paris of the distant past, but with a combination of this magic called shade. And our main character, Sarah, I think, her full name's Seraphine, but I think it's just Sarah, is the short. She is a daughter of someone who manufactures shade. And there are these 2 rival gangs in Paris called the Cloaks and the Daggers, which, yes, Cloak and Dagger on the nose, but it's fun. It's fine. And they both use shade. The Cloaks wear it and they're thieves. The Daggers drink it and they're assassins. And so obviously when she is forced to join one, she joins the Cloaks and is then kind of in this constant competition with this guy who's a dagger, of course, because is it really a YA fantasy if you don't have enemies to lovers where he's trying to kill her? Like, of course not. You really don't. I think this was done so well. I would call it more of a rivals to lovers than an enemies to lovers. But genuinely, like, it is, and that's not a spoiler, like, you can see it coming from the first 2 chapters if you've ever read a book before. But The Dagger and the Flame was really, really good. I highly recommend it. I think it's great for anyone above the age of 14. I would say younger than 14, maybe parental guidance there. I don't actually know what age it's recommended for. Let's find out. 14 and up. Wow, okay. Love that about ARCs, that they have the actual age range. So 14 and up is what this book is recommended for. It's what I'd recommend it for. I genuinely think this is going to be like the next big YA fantasy series, and I think we're going to see a lot more about this very soon. Another ARC that I read in January was The Love Haters by Catherine Center. If you don't already know about me, I am a huge Catherine Center fan. I love that woman so much. Catherine Center is like my Emily Henry, if that makes sense. I've been a Catherine Center fan for a few years now. I read the ARC of The Bodyguard back in 2022, so it's been 3 years. Wow, that's crazy. But I read an ARC of The Bodyguard back then, and immediately I was like, oh yes, this is new favorite author. I love this. And the reason I was so into The Bodyguard is because I personally am a huge fan of Ally Carter. I'm a huge fan of the Gallagher Girls series. I have loved the Gallagher Girls series since I was young. And so I was like, oh, she's his bodyguard. She's like kind of a spy. Like, she's not a spy, but in my head, I was like, she's kind of a spy. And so that was immediately for me. I was like, yes, this is where I need to be. This is what I need to be reading. Loved The Bodyguard. The Love Haters I enjoyed. I don't think it was as much for me as something like The Bodyguard. But that's just because I wasn't as into the premise. I did really enjoy it. I liked how she used social media as like this platform. She kind of had somebody who worked in social media without working in social media. And I think that was really cool to read as like a booktuber, as a book talker, as somebody who does that kind of stuff. I did really enjoy reading that. So yeah, I definitely would recommend The Love Haters if you are a Catherine Center fan, if you've read other stuff of hers, if you've enjoyed it, whatever. Then I read Graveyard Shift by ML Rio. This is gonna be an unpopular opinion. I'm prepared for that. I am prepared to get hate for this. If I'm being so honest, I hated it. Maybe hated it's not fair, but I got about halfway through, and because it's a novella and it was only 200 pages, I was like, well, I've gotten this far. Like, I kind of have to finish it, but I didn't want to. I really did not enjoy any process of it. I think I maybe enjoyed the middle a bit when things were like finally getting going, but none of the characters, well, no, that's not true. One of the characters got a complete arc. When you have a POV for 4 separate characters and only one of them gets a full arc, that poor choice. Only give a POV to the character you're giving a full arc to, and maybe 1 chapter POV from another like person, but genuinely you're gonna waste all that time getting like the background and the stories of everyone else, and then you're just not gonna complete their character arc. It made me so angry, genuinely. Like, I know that that's ridiculous, but I read for plot. I am a plot first person. I have never been a fan of character-driven work. The only time I've ever enjoyed character-driven work was Sally Rooney's Normal People. And I genuinely, I cannot do character-driven. I think it takes a lot for me to enjoy a character-driven story. But if you have a character-driven story with a plot and the character doesn't get an arc, it's a failure of character-driven storytelling. It's not done. It just isn't done. Anyways, putting that aside, I gave it 2 stars. We're just not going to talk about it anymore. I don't want to talk about what it was about. I don't want to talk, you can go read the description. You can go read it yourself if you want to. I'm not going to waste more breath on it than I have to. I'm just telling you, I personally did not enjoy it. I personally do not recommend it. And I did enjoy If We Were Villains. So I'm not saying I'm not a fan of ML Rio at all. It's just Graveyard Shift in particular I didn't enjoy. Okay. Whew. Then, because I felt personally as if I was kind of going through a reading slump, I just didn't want to pick up a book. And because January was the month that it was, I decided personally that I was going to reread a favorite series of mine from when I was younger, which for me was Gallagher Girls, the series I've already kind of gone on a tirade about. If you have not read Gallagher Girls, what are you doing with your life? The first book is called I'd Tell You I Love You, but then I'd Have to Kill You. All of these books, even on reread, were 5 stars for me. They have been 5 stars for me for a very, very long time. Ally Carter is an auto-buy author for me. I love her so much, genuinely. If you are adult and want to read something of hers that's adult, I recommend The Blonde Identity. It was really well done. I really enjoyed it. I also really enjoyed her book, The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. I actually read it over Christmas break. And it was so great. I loved it. I had so much fun with it. Genuinely, I will say this for Ally Carter, she cannot write a man in any kind of different font from the guys that she wrote in Gallagher. They're all kind of the same guy, but I like the way she does it. So I'm okay with it, but they're all kind of the same. So there is that. I do really, really enjoy her work, though. I'm currently reading an arc of her sequel to The Blonde Identity, The Blonde Who Came In From the Cold. But the Gallagher Girls series is just so well done. It is a perfect arc in each storyline. The books kind of get darker as you go on. They are YA. I would say the first book you really could be at like a middle grade age and read, but beyond that you should be 13 and above. Or is YA 12 and up? No, it's 13 and up. So I would say maybe be 13 or older to read the rest of the books, because they do get dark. I personally read them when I was like 10. A lot of stuff I didn't get at the time that now I reread it and I'm like, who let me read this at age 10? So don't recommend that. But I read the original 6 books, which is the full storyline. You don't have to read anything outside of it. And then I also read the novella A Gallagher Wedding, which is short story, takes place after all 6 books. And then I read The Spies That Bind, which is an Audible original that is a prequel novella that is about Cammie and Liz and Bex before they become the Gallagher Girls. They are known as in the first book in the series. And it's great. I really do recommend all of her books. They're great. But Gallagher Girls is a great place to start. After I finished the Gallagher Girls series, I read Darkly by Marisha Pessl, which the first book of this author's that I ever read was Neverworld Wake. I read it in high school. Amazing, chef's kiss. I think about that book all the time. Darkly was so good. It took me, I'm gonna be so honest, it took me about 10 chapters to really get into it, but these are short chapters. So that's like 30 pages-ish. So worth it. I ended up giving it a 5-star. Not including rereads. This was my first 5-star of 2025. It is so deserving of that title. I cannot recommend it enough. Basically, the premise of Darkly is this girl applies to be part of an internship. They're all high schoolers. She applies to be part of an internship for this company, Darkly, that makes board games. And there's this kind of idea that you don't own a Darkly board game, it owns you. And there are only so many years that they were made, and there are only so many copies of each version that was made. I don't know how to explain it basically, but it's like horror. It is horror, thriller. I'd say more thriller than horror. And the interns have to figure out, basically this kid disappeared playing a Darkly game, and they have to figure out what happened to him, and where he is. So that was super, super cool to me. I'm so excited. The game that they have to play is called Valkyrie, and just the storyline of what happened to it, and I genuinely, at no point did I know which way this was going. I thought I knew, and then I'd be like, oh my God, I kind of if you had taken my idea of what I thought was going on and made it a million times crazier, that's what was actually going on. So I just, I was hooked. I don't know how else to say it. This is so good, so worth it. I really enjoyed it. I did not think, you can't really trust anyone in this book. Nobody's reliable. Nobody's telling the truth. And that's kind of one of the greatest things. They all have something to hide, and it makes it so special. And the reasoning for who's there and why's there and the group that they are together, just so well done. Cannot recommend it enough. So yeah, definitely read Darkly. And then the next book that I read was also an audiobook, but The Serial Killer Guide to San Francisco. I gave it 3 stars. I liked it. It was, it was a mystery. It was good. But as somebody who started my love of mysteries with Agatha Christie, I am kind of a snob. I'm going to be so honest with you. I am a snob when it comes to mystery. And so a book that is a really good mystery, I'm not always going to have that value to it. I don't always think that it is a really great mystery. So, I mean, like, I don't know. I will let other people be the judge of it. I enjoyed it, but I definitely don't think it's like way up there and one of my favorites, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. But basically this woman finds out that a family member close to her, or well, not close, but like a family member dies, and then she finds out that 2 people have actually been killed, and they were killed in the style of her grandfather, who is a convicted serial killer who died in prison. But she has never believed he was guilty. So she kind of gets involved in the case because she thinks she can prove that her grandfather was not the original killer, and also find the killer of these 2 people at this point in time, because it's been enough years that like the original person. But anyways, yeah, I definitely think it's worth a read if you like mystery, if you like that kind of true crimey serial killer type stuff. I think it's worth a read for sure. Those are all the books I read in January. I am also currently reading The Odyssey, so keep a lookout for a video that I will be making across this entire semester. So it'll be a while before I post it, but I'm gonna do reading like high literature kind of, or reading like in-depth, like lots of literature. We're reading the Odyssey, the Aeneid, and a few other really in-depth pieces of literature for a lit class that I'm taking. This is my second semester of my senior year of college. Tears. So it's almost over, but I decided to take a lit class this semester just for funsies, because I wanted to reread some of the stuff that I haven't read since high school, and kind of work on analyzing lit. So I will be doing a little video on that and that experience, and my thoughts on those books. So keep an eye out for that, and I hope you all had a better January than I did, and I'll see you next month.